This is Melissa from vmis.net, and today we're going to take a look at the UCS Platform Emulator, more specifically the newest version, 4.12c PE1. All it means is that this version of the UCS Platform Emulator is based on UCS Manager 4.12c, and the PE1 is just letting you know it's a platform emulator build. The first thing you need to do is head over to the Cisco community site. If you can't find it, if you just go to my website, vmis.net, and search for UCS Platform Emulator or click on Cisco, you'll find a million links about this stuff. You just need to download it, right? You will need to log in, download it, and then deploy it to your favorite virtualization space. I have it running in ESXi, but you can also use Workstation, Fusion, VirtualBox, whatever you want. So let's take a look at what's actually coming in this release. Generally, there's a new platform emulator release when there's a significant feature that comes out. In this case, the significant feature, if we go and actually look at the page specifically for the release notes of this version, is support for the 64108 Fabric Interconnect, which is a huge deal. So let's go look at these Fabric Interconnects. If you go to my site, click Cisco, you'll see that I have a lot of articles on UCS architecture and the components. I don't know why these pictures are so skewed, but this is supposed to be a 1U device, the 6454. What it means, it's a 6400 series and it's got 54 ports. The UCS can scale, well, a single UCS domain can scale up to 160 servers, blade racks, any combinations. So if you only have 54 ports, that's kind of a limitation. You can, of course, get kind of fabric extenders to help you with that. But the 64108 really adds a ton of ports. This is a 2U device, even though it looks gigantic. And there was a huge gap in the product line after they retired the 6200 series. What was it? A 6296, I think, had 60, it was a 6200 with 96 ports. And it was, I want to say 4U, I don't even remember. But it had a lot of ports, right? That's the whole point. Because you can scale these UCS domains so big, the 6300 never had a really big, lots of port device like this. So when it comes out in 6400, that's really important because it's going to help a lot of people with their architectures architecting UCS at scale. So let's take a look at the emulator. I have already deployed it to ESXi, as I said, and our logins everywhere for this are going to be UCSPE, UCSPE. It's a virtual appliance that you run. Let's log in, and there's really not much you need to do here, but I'm going to show you anyway. UCS, if I can get this to work. UCSPE, UCSPE. And really, if you want to mess around with your networking, you can do it here. I have mine just set to DHCP, and I just go look at the IP. I mean, I use it when I use it. I actually haven't touched the platform emulator in probably over a year, so this is cool for me too. You can reboot it, reset it, all those good things. One thing to note, anytime you reboot the emulator device, you will lose your UCS Manager configuration. The UCS Manager configuration does not stick between reboots. You need to back it up and re-import it every time. So that's something to remember and something that always burns people. If we come over to UCSPE itself, this is what we see when we log in. I logged into my VIP. You can see I'm on the Cisco UCS Platform Emulator, and this is how I launch UCS Manager. But we're not going to do that quite yet. What I want to call your attention to is equipment over here. And this shows us the equipment in our kind of UCS environment, right? So let's go to Fabric Interconnects. And you can see that I have a 64108, which is a default configuration. If you go to the product page, you can also download some canned configurations, and you can actually completely customize this and get really fancy, changing out the Fabric Interconnect, changing out rack servers, changing out chassis, changing out blade servers, pretty much everything. You can make this identical to your production environment, which is really handy if you want to use it for training or testing or documentation. I'm not actually going to go into how you can kind of change this configuration right now. I have a couple blog posts on vmis.net that talk about how to customize it, but I want to show you what you get out of the box with this version of Platform Emulator. So it's really easy to use. You can do all sorts of fun stuff. You can launch UCS Manager from right here. You can actually import a saved XML. So if you had a previous version of the emulator, you could export your configuration and re-import it, import from a live UCS, which is interesting. So you can get, like I said, that exact copy of your production environment. Here's all the different things you can do right here. Validate things, save the configuration, right? Export it to give to someone else on your team, or to put into a new emulator. That's really how you migrate between emulators. You would import and export this hardware configuration and then export and import your UCS Manager configuration. Remember, again, every time we restart UCSPE, we're going to lose all our UCS Manager configuration. So this is kind of the main equipment screen and where you would do any kind of changing that you wanted to do to get that custom configuration. We're not going to mess with that now. We're just going to go launch UCS Manager right here. And again, every time we log into anything on this, we're pretty much going to go with UCSPE while we wait for this to load. We're going to log in. And this isn't a fake UCS Manager, right? This is actually UCS Manager. It looks, feels, and smells exactly like UCS Manager 412C, right? So it will mirror exactly what you have in your production environment. That's nice, anonymous reporting. You're going to see a lot of weird errors in here. Remember, this is emulated hardware. You can clear out a lot of this stuff, but I've never actually managed to get it down to 0, which really isn't a big idea, right? Because we're using this for testing, messing around, training, all that kind of good stuff. So you would just configure this like any other UCS, right? So let's go to, what do we feel like configuring today? So here's all our good stuff. I want to go back here and go to equipment. I'm going to click on my fabric interconnect. And so first things first, right, we probably want some uplink ports. So you would just come here, right click a port and say configure as uplink port, right? So you're literally configuring this exactly like you would a production UCS device. I can't stress that enough. It's not a fake UCS Manager. It's really UCS Manager. The hardware is just fake. If you need help trying to figure out how to do this, the best thing to do, honestly, is, so I used to work for NetApp and work on something called FlexPod, which was a solution stack of Cisco UCS NetApp storage and Cisco Nexus switches. All of the FlexPod deployment guides have the complete steps on how to configure a UCS system. So go just Google FlexPod deployment guide, pick one, and it will show you exactly how to configure UCS Manager. So that's a nifty tip for learning. And again, this is UCS Manager. It's not fake, just your hardware is emulated. You can use it just like you would UCS Manager all of the time. And that's all there is to it, right? So you would need to create service profiles and all that kind of stuff that you would normally. And then you could also import your configuration. I don't have any configurations to import right now, any UCS Manager configurations, because like I said, I haven't touched this in a long time. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go configure some stuff, or maybe I'll go change some of the hardware and then configure a couple things, and then we'll make another video and we'll show you specifically how to edit that hardware configuration and how to import and export a UCS Manager config. So I hope that's enough to get you started. Remember, this is all emulated equipment. You can't break anything. If you reboot it, it gets blown away. So if you mess anything up too badly, just reboot the whole thing. You'll lose your UCS Manager configuration, but that could be okay. And that's how you get started with the Cisco UCS Platform Emulator. It really couldn't be more simple.